NDC bears teeth at the Electoral Commission over suggestions it should table its proposed electoral reforms at IPAC, accusing the EC of destroying the platform they wanted fixed.
Of all the people who are suggesting the IPAC, you noted the number of times that the Commission has told political parties that IPAC is toothless.
We have more as the party provides details for its 34 proposals for election.
Until 2020 came. You agree with me that 2020 elections has been one of the worst elections.
We'll bring you the reaction of the EC and speak to independent election observers. Tonight, the National Democratic Congress (NDC) says the Electoral Commission's suggestion that the party tables its proposed electoral reforms before the IPAC is unfounded. According to General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, the party is shocked at the position of the EC because it had promised to look at its reforms and take a decision, only to hear in the media that the EC says they should go to the IPAC and table those reforms. Well, at a news conference today, the reform itself is problematic and requires immediate fixing.
If you are sick with a lighter ailment and you are advised to go to a hospital that is reform IPAC and take it back to the original reasons why IPAC was set up. So if it is adopted, everybody will go to IPAC to find resolution. But if the IPAC is not delivering on the reasons why it was established, it will amount to plowing the sun, if you ask me to go back to IPAC. And of all the people who are suggesting the IPAC route, none of them amuses me more than that which was coming from the Commission itself. Have you noted the number of times that the Commission has told political parties that IPAC is toothless? IPAC cannot suggest anything to them. They have absolute independence. So is it the same commission that is saying that now let us go represent? So Electoral Commission never ceases to amuse some of us, honestly. On one hand, they will say IPAC cannot. You are still calling that we should go back to IPAC. When they said they were not working with IPAC, and they established the Committee of Eminent Persons. Fortunately, the chairman of our committee is from the Committee of Eminent Persons, and I'm sure he may wish to call a meeting at which these proposals will be tabled.
That is the General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, they're speaking on why they do not think that the IPAC is a good platform or a platform they consider appropriate to, table these reforms. My colleague Kweku Asante was at this news and gave further explanation too. They still hold on to the claim that the 2020 election was heavily flawed. Tell us more.
That actually affirmed the victory of the president, Akufo-Addo. They still insist that they are, which they say will fix the system. But until then, they want the position to be known that they still think that the 2020 election was heavily flawed.
It is trite knowledge that all is not well about our elections in Ghana. Some of the problems began as far back as 1992, and from the 1992 elections, we thought we were making progress because each election represented an improvement on the previous elections until 2020 came. And you agree with me that 2020 elections has been one of the worst elections that we have had party to resolve some of the problems without success. And we made it known to the whole world that we are accepting to work with the outcomes of the court processes, not because upon what we have.
Johnson Asiedu Nketia, Johnson Asiedin Ketia, then my colleague Kweku Asante is still with me in the studio. Kweku, let's now look at the proposals. Today, they gave further details to their proposal for the EC to be split into two institutions. And then...
the Electoral Commission says, look, the NDC, I beg your pardon, per the papers they've reviewed of Ghana's electoral reform system, they've realized that the best way to make the Electoral Commission more neutral and a more independent arbiter of elections in the country is to still maintain that episode of state. They want prior approval of Parliament. Not just that, they want 2/3 approval in Parliament. And so they cite some authorities to back this claim. They say that the Constitutional Review Commission that was set up in 2010 by the late President Mills actually recommended, and that commission included the current EC chairperson, Mrs. Jinadu Kwemans, was a member of that commission. When they presented their report, they actually believed and they actually suggested, for which the president at the time issued a white paper and accepted, that the Electoral Commission must be appointed with prior approval of Parliament. And they also say that they want some significant buy-in from all the political parties in the country. And so they also speak about splitting the Electoral Commission into...
In the first, we propose that members of the EC should be appointed by the President in consultation with the Council of State and with the prior approval of Parliament, provided that the chairperson shall be approved by 2/3 of all the members of Parliament. Now, we draw attention to a similar independent institution of the Constitution, the Supreme Court, whose members are similarly appointed on the advice of the Judicial Council or in consultation with the Council of State as appropriate, but in all cases, with the prior approval of Parliament. In our second flagship recommendation, we propose to the NDC party that the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, that's the IPAC, should be backed by legislation, and that its composition and functions should be clearly spelled out in the legislation. We draw attention to a similar independent body in the Constitution, the judiciary, and in legislation. In the NDC's third flagship recommendation, we propose that ultimately the EC itself should be split into two separate and distinct bodies. One, Office of the Regulator of Political Parties, ORPP, responsible for the registration and regulation of political parties. Two, an Electoral Commission, EC, responsible for the elections and referenda.
Well, good. That is Nana Tudazi.
Right. So
he's the chairman.
Yes, Nana Tudazi, together with Kwame Ahoy, chaired the NDC's technical committee to put together these electoral reform proposals.
Now, they also had issues with the registration of voters and abolition the regional collation centers, which was a feature in the 2020 election.
Right. So on the first call of the regional collation center, they say there was no challenge, and so that solution from the EC was not necessary. And so they are raising issue with that specific one. They want that to be abolished in the next election. But also on the other issues that you raise, they want that the Electoral Commission should be able to get substantive buy-in from all the political parties. And so we can listen again to Nana Tudazi.
Continuous registration of voters register of the voter system already approved by IPAC and accepted by the EC. We say this must be implemented. However, for reasons of cost of the EC, once a month, on the last Friday of every month. The mandatory requirement for the publication of applicants for recruitment as temporary EC staff, for registration of voters, and for elections, and for allowing the public to object to applicants who have questionable backgrounds or have overt partisan biases must be strict to be used for an election with their names, code numbers, and location election. General did mention this. But we were of the firm belief, from what we saw, with records available to us, that the regional coalition centers, which were recently created for this 20 to 5 p.m., which has served us so well since our electoral process, we propose should be maintained. And we've given reasons why we're saying all these.
And Kweku them out.
Right. So since this new electoral commission came into office, they've changed the format of IPAC. So they vote. They vote on decisions, and most of those decisions have been going against the NDC. And so the NDC have been taking a stronger stance against these smaller political parties, so-called. What they are saying is they want a system where some of these political parties will be sieved out. They are saying that some political parties cannot take decisions in an election they themselves will not be contesting in. And so if these people will all come to IPAC and then come and vote to influence decisions, then they must contest in the election. But then a system has been put in place to ensure that some of these political parties that they say they are moribund, that they say that they do not add anything to the electoral political system of the country, must be weeded out.
They raise issues with us for our silence on the issue of. They also propose the creation that the proposed office of the regulator of political parties, ORPP, should be redesignated Multi-Party Democracy Commission, MPDC, with an expanded health of Ghana's democracy, especially in periods in between elections. They also propose that our proposed name, ORPP, should be changed to Political Parties Regulatory Commission. They proposed further that there should be a cap on political party funding for electoral campaigns. They also proposed that the NDC's engagement with. They indicate that the membership of the EC should be technocratic rather than political, with the membership positions being advertised, candidates interviewed, and the most suitable persons appointed. They indicate that there should be a criteria to sieve out registered but inactive and moribund political parties, and political parties that do not appear to be serious from the electoral process, from the membership of IPAC.
And you have the Nanatu Dazi, who is the chairman of the NDC's Technical Committee for Electoral Reforms. Let's go into the phone lines now. We're joined by Rhoda Afo, who is with the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, CODEO. Madam, I'm grateful for your time here on Top Story. Just before I come to you, we have been reaching out to we've actually reached out to the Electoral Commission for their response to some of the issues raised by the NDC today. They are not available to speak to us at the moment, but they have been giving us the NDC, and we have a copy of the letter from our sources there. Kweku Asante is still with me in the studio. Kweku, read to us details of that letter.
Right, so this letter is dated 9 July 2021. It was soon after the NDC submitted this proposal to the EC and addressed to the General Secretary of the party. It says, I bring you warm greetings from the Electoral Commission and trust that this letter finds you well. I write to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 26 June 2021. It quotes the reference number on the above subject, that is the NDC position paper on electoral reforms at the Electoral Commission.
Thank you very much. That's my colleague Kweku Asante bringing us some details from the Electoral Commission. And I must say, the Electoral Commission has denied ever saying that it has failed or it has refused to look at the claims of the NDC, the reforms of the NDC. In fact, they say their reference to IPAC is because they cannot, on matters of policy, on matters of reforms, deal exclusively with a party, with an individual, with a single party. And that is why they think that that these matters must be brought before IPAC, where there are other parties who can, the NDC has said that IPAC over the years, especially under the tenure of Jean Mensah and these commissioners, have not functioned properly. You have been monitoring the election process. What is your view of IPAC? Has anything changed significantly?
Well, first of all, good evening to your listeners. I think the concerns about IPAC and how effectively engagement over there is done is something that is not new. It has come up a few times in the past. And I think often, depending on where parties sit, they tend to look at things differently. So it's not an entirely new concern or issue. But of course, I think we have all been witness to some of the fallout from the deliberations that have taken place at IPAC over the past several months. Sometimes disagreements about what exactly transpired and what didn't transpire and all of that. So there has been a few challenges with IPAC and deliberations, but I think these are issues that the stakeholders can work together to address. What particularly is problematic about IPAC that we are trying to identify or to raise? Is it the quality of deliberations? Is it the quality of representation? So we should be very specific about what the issues are. The point is that once political parties have their certificate from the Electoral Commission, they are entitled to be at the table during IPAC deliberations. So if you're raising issues about how business is conducted, like I said, we should be very specific about what particular challenge, because as far as the parties are entitled to be heard, then of course you expect that they will take part in decision making. But that of course goes back to the issue, which is something that the NC has also raised in their proposals, which is the regulation of political parties, because if this is something that we get serious with, then we will be able to control or will be able to monitor the level of representation, because now you are making sure that people who find themselves at IPAC are indeed parties that are worthy of their name. So there are definitely issues about political party regulation in this country and how the Electoral Commission also takes that mandate seriously. And I think that's one issue that this whole discussion raises.
The issue of the quality of representation is one, but the NDC have also raised issue with what they say is the posturing of the EC at IPAC, having to refer to the law very often to say we are an independent commission, you cannot dictate to us, and yet they sit at IPAC, and of course IPAC is an advisory body, and they think that the posturing of the EC does not help in building consensus. Is this something that you can corroborate in any way?
I mean, personally, I would say that indeed the posturing of not just the EC, but also the parties, the two major stakeholders, I think it's not been the best, okay? So often when we come to the table, it's as if we have our own entrenched position, we are coming for affirmation, and if we don't get that, then we are not getting the deal, you know. So far as understanding of the IPAC platform is essentially a tool to build consensus in terms of policy and the direction of our electoral process. So, indeed, I think personally, I can confirm that the posturing of not just the EC but also the party sometimes is not the best. We should be able to open up to each other, and we come with this closed-mindedness. Then it doesn't foster the kind of collaboration and consensus building that we want to achieve at the end of some of these deliberations. So I mean, there's a responsibility on the part of the EC to open up. Indeed, I mean, there are times that you think that some of the deliberations really are not real deliberations, because it's like you put consent across, we said your consent, but can we move on? That kind of attitude. And also on the part of the party, there are times that they are not also open to some of the direction that may be coming from the commission. So this is something that both sides need to work on.
Department of the University of Ghana. Doc, I'm grateful for your time here on Top Story. Let's start with IPAC, which the NDC says is part of its reforms, the 34 reforms that they are calling for before the next elections in 2024. You think that under the watch of Jean Mensah on that?
So I think before I answer your question, let me greet your listeners. But this push by the NDC is not different from what we have seen over the years. Normally, when a party would the East, contrary is the case when they are in opposition, and then nothing much has changed. So nothing has changed so much regarding the issue you are talking about. What we are seeing decided to come out with this proposal. To me, some of them are very laudable and all that, even though I disagree with a few of them. But I discuss these issues because if you go through the list, you realize that some of them are real important issues that I believe that when it's taken, I have a different position. I think that they should go to the IPAC and table the issue for a broader discussion to be held on the matter.
And you mentioned proper forum. We have been engaging the EC, and they tell us that out of the 34 proposals the NDC is putting forward, just about 4 directly apply this jurisdiction, matters that should be dealt with in Parliament. These are matters of legislation, and what EC has adopted an approach of taking a vote, and the NDC has issues with some of the political look at again.
Yes, I think I support NDC position on that. Because political parties should be able to submit their accounts, audited accounts to Electoral Commission as part of the process towards presidential election, and then not be enforced by the EC. And that is why you are getting mushroom parties coming up, and then also going to IPAC and having the same vote with dominant parties. So you can understand NDC from this perspective against those who cross the line. That is a very simple matter that the EC to have the political will to do.
Madam, do you agree with Doc on this position?
No, I mean, as I was indicating earlier, that the issue of party regulation is something that we have to take seriously. We haven't been able to do that as of yet. And so to be able to take up seriously so that we're able to sanitize the political parties environment, the scene, so that we know the equity.
This is Rhoda Afo, who is with the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers. We earlier heard from Dr. Assasant, who is the Political Science Department of the University of Ghana. Let me say that we were built to speak to the NDC so we could peruse some of the proposals that they are bringing forward, the details that they provided today at the news conference. Unfortunately, we did not reach any. That's it for Top Story, brought to you by